It was an extraordinary and lurid tale that sent shockwaves through Westminster and beyond. Allegations of rape, the murder and sadistic abuse of children, supposedly carried out by a VIP paedophile ring of spy masters, politicians and peers of the realm. Claims that were given credence by a senior parliamentarian and aired in a frenzy of front pages and TV headlines. They led to a £2 million police inquiry that spanned the globe. But all this originated from the testimony of one man who made repeated claims about this supposed VIP paedophile ring.
They knew where I was. They knew where I went to school. They knew everything.
And today a jury concluded he was telling a farrago of lies. The accused were all establishment figures, including a former Prime Minister, the late Sir Edward Heath. Leon Brittan, Home Secretary in the 1980s, was suffering from cancer when the allegations were made. He died in 2015, before his name was cleared. Former Conservative MP Harvey Proctor spoke out aggressively challenging the claims.
I'm not a murderer. I'm not a paedophile or pederast.
Field Marshal Lord Bramall, a D-Day veteran.
Torture? Are you suggesting that a very, very senior army officer with an impeccable record engaged in torture of children?
And former heads of MI5 and MI6. Their accuser was 51-year-old Carl Beech, a former NHS manager and school governor. In 2014 and 15, he claimed he'd been abused as a child by all of these powerful men and witnessed some of them murder 3 boys. Here he describes how his school friend was run over and killed.
And it was thrown up into the air, and everything just stopped. Everything just stopped.
Except this never happened. Beech's web of lies took up years of police time. There were over 20 hours of recorded interviews, generating hundreds of pages of transcripts. He sketched out venues where he said abuse took place and disturbing diagrams of injuries inflicted during torture sessions, from burns to broken bones and stab wounds.
Did you draw these places solely from your memory of 30 to 40 years ago?
Yeah.
They were actually copied from internet images, later found on his computer. Those places included Dolphin Square in Westminster, Elm Guest House in southwest London, and various army barracks. He even gave the police a penknife, which he said had been used to threaten him. Beech claimed Harvey Proctor tried to castrate him with it at a sex party and was only stopped by Edward Heath.
The same Edward Heath would never speak to me in the House of Commons, but would snort at me as he passed me by in a Commons corridor. It is so far-fetched as to be unbelievable. It is unbelievable because it is not true.
The supposed weapon was actually a fruit knife belonging to Beech's grandmother. With all these accusations, he'd hoped to be in court as a victim, yet he ended up in the dock himself.
Carl Beech is not a victim of abuse. What he is a manipulative and deceitful liar. Because of the allegations he was making, the nation were interested and shocked and surprised at what he had to say. So he found himself regularly in newspapers, he had access to journalists, he had access to politicians. He was receiving supportive messages from victims of sexual abuse. He became quite a celebrity, and it's clear that he relished that role.
So how did the claims of one fantasist result in such an extensive and expensive police operation? Beech's allegations were first brought to the public eye after the Jimmy Savile scandal, by now defunct investigative news website Exaro. As a complainant of sexual abuse, his identity was disguised and he was given a pseudonym, Nick.
Nasty. Like to inflict pain, like to see us in pain.
Then the Labour MP Tom Watson, now the party's deputy leader, got involved, meeting Nick, championing his claims and pushing for an investigation. Met Police detectives invited Nick, aka Beech, to come in for interviews, and Operation Midland was launched.
Nick has been interviewed over a long period of time by experienced detectives from the Child Abuse Command, and he has also met an investigator from the Murder Command. They and I believe what Nick to be saying is credible and true. So yes, we do believe what Nick is saying.
The Metropolitan Police were lapdogs to Mr. Watson's crude dog whistle. It's time for the torchlight to take a closer look at Mr. Watson. Mr. Watson likes the stage to call upon others to apologise or to put right past wrongs. It is time for an apology from him to me and everyone named or implicated in this truly disgraceful chapter in the history of British policing.
In the days, months and years after the launch of Operation Midland, there was a flurry of speculation and mass media coverage, including a major BBC interview.
A group of men, very powerful people, and they controlled my life for the next 9 years. They created fear that penetrated every part of me.
The families of those accused, including Sir Edward Heath's godson, watched on in horror at both the media and the police.
It defied common sense, and they seemed to have no caution about what they chose to believe. Indeed, I think the more they encouraged him, the more outlandish he became. So it became a cumulative fantasy. The police behaved in such a ham-fisted way. I think that was atrocious.
And the idea of his godfather, Sir Edward Heath, colluding with Harvey Proctor?
It would have been very hard for them to organise a co-murder because they would never speak to each other. So there would have been an absurdity there. But of course it's not a joke. It's deadly serious. The peddling of the lies was a very active operation, and there seemed to be no way of stopping it expanding.
But eventually it all unravelled. The Met Police could find no evidence for Carl Beech's claims. They ended up asking Northumbria Police to investigate Beech himself. And when Northumbria Police did so, incredibly, they found evidence of child abuse on Beech's own computer. The man who had purported to be a victim was in fact himself a paedophile. And as police prepared to confront him in early 2018, he fled the country.
After an international manhunt, he was arrested in Sweden, where he had been living in this remote house. He was eventually extradited. Carl Beech has been found guilty and is likely to face a prison sentence. But there are serious questions for those who enabled and amplified his malicious lies. Journalists, the Met Police and the deputy leader of the Labour Party. How were they all so easily hoodwinked?
And Fatima joins us now. Fatima, what's Tom Watson been saying?
Well, sadly, he's not made himself available for interview despite repeated requests over a number of weeks. We wanted to put the very heavy criticism that Harvey Proctor made to him directly, but that's not been possible. This afternoon, his office has issued a statement saying the gist of it is essentially that Mr. Watson thought he had a duty to respond as a public figure of responsibility, that he had one meeting with the man he knew as Nick, that is Carl Beech, and that his main role was to urge Beech to go to the police.
And London's Metropolitan Police have come in for severe criticism. What have they been saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they point to the backdrop of intense scrutiny. So this is the post-Savile climate that they were facing. But nevertheless, they point out that a review has taken place. That's the Enriquez review, and that lessons have been learnt from that review.
There will nonetheless be an internal debrief within the Metropolitan Police Service following Carl Beech's trial to identify any additional lessons. It remains true that investigating allegations of sexual offences is a very complex and challenging area of police work.
Now, it's worth also pointing out the Independent Police Complaints Commission has looked into the individual police officers and cleared them of any wrongdoing, and that the Met Police has played out claims to Lord Bramall, Lady Britain, but a case with Harvey Proctor remains pending.